Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. UFC Qatar Tsarukyan versus Hooker just ended, and this was actually a pretty stacked event. I would say almost every single fight on this card was epic, or at least very solid. So I'm gonna give you my reaction on everything that happened. Let's start off with the first fight, Marek Bujlo versus Denzel Freeman. I picked Marek, but after seeing the weigh-ins the other day, I was not confident about that. I still stuck with my pick because, I don't know, I wanted to believe. But Denzel just looked better than him on the feet, honestly. He just had more moves, more output, and overall more answers for every moment that passed by. But yeah, this was kind of a bit of a barn burner, not really much to see. It was like just the first heavyweight fight on the prelims. That's all I have to say about that one. Let's move on to the next one, guys. Nurullo Aliev versus Shem. I actually thought this was a pretty decent fight. I did pick Shem to win last minute. I switched it up on Thursday. My initial pick was Nurullo Aliev, but for some reason I thought that Shem could pull it off. Unfortunately, the whole time, the minute he walked out in the first round, actually, it kind of hit me that he wasn't ready for this. Like, he wasn't conditioned. He didn't train enough. Aliev was in a constant flow. He was in a rhythm. He was just kind of locked in from the get-go. And that was something that Shem really struggled with. In the first round especially, he really looked out of place. He did kind of start building momentum in the second and third, but to be honest, he was always kind of a few steps behind. And I do think that he actually has potential. Like, it wasn't a terrible performance, but it was clear that one of the fighters was better prepared, you know. And that fighter was Aliev, so yeah. Anyhow, let's move on to the next one, guys. Ismail Naurdiev versus... I actually don't know how to pronounce that name. I'm just going to assume it's Naurdiev. Anyways, versus Ryan Loder. I picked Ryan Loder like a fool. For some reason, I thought he had more of a chance. It was a bit of a gamble. I understand that. I just thought that he would be solid enough to hold his own in there, but no, he had one good moment. I don't know what this type of attack is called, but when you like walk forward and jab multiple times, he had one of those good moments, but then he just got KO'd. He just totally got the lights knocked out of him and fell, and that was it. Like, done, power out. And that happened so early in the round one. What was it, like a minute and a half in? Something like that. Yeah, it's interesting. This was one of the first times seeing Ismail, actually, and I really greatly underestimated him. And greatly overestimated Ryan Loder. For some reason, I don't know why. I may have associated him a little bit with Jared Gordon, which was not the correct association. Yeah, solid quick KO for Ismail. Let's move on to the next one. This one kind of hurt my heart a little bit, but also I think that's because it didn't go the way I expected it to. Or anyone really expected it to. I mean, some people did. But yeah, Bekzat Almakhan versus Aleksandre Topuria. I picked Bekzat Almakhan just because I thought that on the feet he would look super slick and solid. And he kind of did in round one. He kind of did. He looked locked in round one, and I don't know what it was, but there was a clear shift in his energy in the second and third round. I don't know if it's because of like the takedown that he experienced, that first takedown that like was more critical and damaging than we had expected, because that's kind of how it felt. In the first round, you could definitely feel that Topuria wasn't going to be an opponent that was just going to get knocked out maybe, even though he did trip a bunch. Like in the first round, Topuria did not look great. He looked okay. He looked fine. He just didn't look amazing. Like, he wasn't locked in, at least not the same way that Bekzat was, and he kept tripping, and my confidence in him wasn't even that high up until he got that first takedown. And immediately you could tell that Bekzat just got totally knocked off rhythm, which is, I think, the worst part of this for Bekzat, because in round 2 and 3, Topuria just looked focused. He was locked in. His guard was high. He was basically unhittable. Which was really impressive to see. Like, he looked much better here than he did in the performance with Colby Thickness. So sometimes fighters do improve a lot in such a short span of time. That was the case for Topuria, and he had a really great performance against Bekzat, to be honest. And I think the takedowns also really wore Bekzat down, because the most he could do was defend them, and he wasn't really getting through Topuria's guard at some point at all. So I feel like he did leave that fight feeling a bit demoralized in some ways, to be honest. So yeah, Topuria was a little bit more conditioned. He looked solid. I really did underestimate him, to be honest, because of that Colby thickness fight. But anyhow, let's move on to the next one, guys. Abdul Rakhman Yakhyaev versus Rafael Cerqueira. This is one of the first times in a while in the UFC where we see a minus 1,000 favorite that actually performs as expected. This was like a 30-second KO. And you know what? Actually, in light heavyweight, to see this type of combo that Abdul threw is like impressive and rare also. He missed the first leg kick, but then the second one that he landed just landed right on the chin. Rafael Cerqueira just lights out, done, fell, nothing left. So yeah, and Rafael Cerqueira also just has one of the worst fight IQs I've seen in the UFC. He does not handle pressure well at all. I will say though, Abdul did put on a lot of pressure in the beginning. So that's also a thing, but there was like zero defense on Rafael Cerqueira's side, like zero. But yeah, dope performance for Abdul, solid 30-second KO. What's more to say? It's nice to see that at least in the heavier divisions, we're seeing guys with a little bit more talent now, I think. Or at least we're seeing more entertaining performances, which, you know, are far and few between in these heavier divisions. Anyhow, let's move on to the next one, guys. Perez versus Almabayev. I picked Almabayev, and honestly, in that first round, I was getting worried for him. Actually, in the second round too. I actually didn't expect Perez to be the one getting takedowns and being on top of Almabayev and pressuring him. But that's kind of what happened in those first two rounds. And it did seem like Almabayev was struggling to get these takedowns and work towards these submissions. And I think a lot of it is because he's so short. He's 5'4". But in the third round, I was so shocked to see, because this was so unexpected for me. But in the third round, there was this moment where Perez was like walking, like they were facing each other, and Almabayev just kind of jumped on top, like not really jumped on top of him, but put his legs around Perez and kind of dragged him down. And I feel like this is only a move that could be performed by such a small fighter like Almabayev. I've never seen a move like that. Like, that was so creative. He just pulled out his inner Yuri energy to pull this one off. And when he did it, it seemed like, duh, that was the move. But I feel like it would take a lot of creativity and trusting the process to make that go the way that it went. But yeah, I'm so glad that Almabayev was able to choke him out, get that submission, because I thought that it wasn't going to happen, and I thought that Perez was going to win. I was actually getting a little bit upset because I was like, fuck, Almabayev, he's like actually skilled. It's just he's so small that it's a bit of a disadvantage. But it worked out for him in the end here. Glad that happened for him. That was a dope situation. All right, let's move on to the next one, guys. Nicolas Dalby versus Saygid Izagakhmaev. This was like one of my least favorite fights on this card. We had old man Nicolas Dalby versus Saygid Izagakhmaev, who didn't have answers. The whole fight was basically Nicolas Dalby clinching and pressuring, and Saygid Izagakhmaev just not having answers. It was so bizarre. It was so bizarre. I mean, it was a split decision. It was a split decision probably because this fight didn't go the way anybody expected it to go. I actually didn't think this was going to be a boring fight, but it was. It was so much clinching, more clinching than I've seen in a while. And you guys know how much I hate clinching. Really, like the moment they start clinching, I just like, I can't. I want to look away. I want to do other things. And it got so sloppy by the end of it. Like, so sloppy. Both of them were barely throwing. Nicolas Dalby was kind of throwing a little more though, but it just looked so bad. It just looked so messy. To be fair though, Nicolas Dalby is 41, so I will cut him some more slack, but Saygid Izagakhmaev, bro, what are you doing? A performance like that from a guy his age? How old is he? He's 31. He's 31. He should not be performing like that against a 41-year-old. No. This is not the way. Anyways, that was a bit of a sad time. But anyways, let's move on to the next fight. The last fight on the prelims. Also a bit of a sad time because, yeah, Bogdan Grad versus Luke Riley. I picked Bogdan Grad. I picked Bogdan Grad because I figured that Luke Riley just wasn't ready for this and that he would just kind of get sat on. I figured he would get the Peyton Talbot treatment, to be honest. A lot of these newer prospects, especially ones that are debuting, will make mistakes and get either KO'd or just neutralized on the ground. And I thought Bogdan was going to neutralize him. To be fair, that is kind of what happened in round one. Round one, Bogdan won that. Just totally controlled Luke Riley on the ground. And there was nothing Luke Riley could do. That's how I assumed the rest of the 2 rounds would go. But Bogdan just got chinned so badly. And he has his chin is so bad. His chin is just glass. Glass chin. Glass chin. The way he fell, it was like watching a piece of rubber fall and hit the ground. And his head is so small. I don't know. It was a little rough to see. I was hoping he would have his guard up high. It wasn't even about that. Like he wasn't locked in. He wasn't focused. That's why it happened. Like when it was playing back in slow motion, I could just tell that he was living in a different moment. He wasn't fully there where he was supposed to be. So sad times for Bogdan Grad. I really do think he could have pulled it off if he was a little more locked in, but because all he had to do really was out grapple Luke Riley. But yeah, control. Anyhow. Alright, let's move on to the next one, guys. Tagir Ulanbekov versus Kyoji Horiguchi. I picked Kyoji Horiguchi. I think it was also pretty obvious at the weigh-ins that he was definitely better prepared for this. His body looked more conditioned. You could tell he just trained more overall. He just looked like his body was more fit to win. Tagir Ulanbekov didn't have a terrible first round, I will say. I think the height difference made it a little awkward for Kyoji to really fully get in the groove. And Ulanbekov was able to not get in too much danger. But that was it for his gas tank. Like, it seemed after the first round of some back and forth, he was just done. He was done. To be fair, he doesn't look like his cardio is great. Like, just by looking at him, it's pretty visible. And after that first round, it was basically Kyoji Horiguchi's game. He just looked great all the way, and Tagir Ulanbekov was just slowly fading. Like, Kyoji Horiguchi looked fresh all the way up until the end, up until he choked out Tagir Ulanbekov. For him, it was like nothing. And that's another reason why I should have put this on my most confident picks, because I watched Kyoji Horiguchi go 5 rounds with no problem in Ryzen, and I should have taken that into account when making this pick, because, yeah, Tagir Ulanbekov, yeah, he's talented on the feet, but that's kind of where his road ends. And we got to see that here. Kyoji Horiguchi is such a crafty vet today. Solid win for him, I would say. Sometimes when I'm reflecting on everything that happened, it makes so much more sense to me why I made certain picks and where I miscalculated or what I missed, what I didn't miss. And this was one of those fights where I'm like, I should have considered the 5-round fight with Horiguchi and Ryzen. Like, that was telling. And just his overall conditioning. And the fact that he's been around, he fought DJ in 2015. So I know he lost in that fight, but still, he's been here for some time. So it's not like he's gonna, get KO'd by anything stupid. He's not that kind of fighter. Anyways, let's move on to the next one, guys. Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Shamil Gaziev. This was so epic, I would say, because there was this question in the air of how will Waldo Cortez Acosta do on a 2-day notice? And he just crushed it, dude. Shamil Gaziev attempted to pressure him in that first round and knock him off balance, but that did not work at all. Waldo's seen it all, dude. He's been around these flashy guys. He's got amazing reaction time. That shit didn't even phase him. It didn't even phase him, and his counters were on point. There was a moment where he wobbled Shamil, and I was like, oh, dang, he almost got him. And that's the beautiful thing about Waldo Cortez Acosta is he never gets too excited. He only exerts the right amount of energy for each moment. It's he's such a good fighter. It's so rare to see this at heavyweight, but also the fact that Shamil never really beat anybody that good if you look at his record. But yeah, Waldo is just looking so good. He just has such crispy counters. And he's obviously really good at knocking people out. I don't know what else is left to say. That was such a he was a slight favorite, honestly. He should have been more of a favorite. And I think he will be after this. I don't think people are going to underestimate him anymore now that we've seen what he's capable of. But yeah, 2 days notice, incredible performance. Absolutely incredible performance. What a cool dude. I think Waldo Cortez Acosta is like becoming one of my favorite fighters. So anyhow, that was that. Let's move on to the next one. Jack Hermansson versus Myktivic Oralbai. I actually thought this fight was going to be closer than it was. But right from the get-go, Myktivic Oralbai just put on the pressure. I usually feel like I don't see this from him. I feel like he usually has slow starts, but this was actually a good game plan for Jack Hermansson because Jack Hermansson isn't really an aggressive guy by any means. He never has aggressive starts. He kind of just paces himself all the way till the end. And he absolutely did not know what to do with Myktivic's pressure. He was just on the back foot that whole time, and the fight ended halfway through that first round. Myktivic eventually landed. It was actually really clean because I think Hermansson had his guard up, but he landed this hook, I think it was, that caught him right on the ear, and that was it for him. That was it for him. He was down. Honestly, I feel like it's been a while since I've seen such a performance from Myktivic Oralbai. Like, I almost forgot that he was capable of knocking people out. Because I feel like I've always known him as more of a grappling dude. So, anyhow, yeah, that was a really solid game plan from him. Solid performance. I think it's time for Jack Hermansson to retire and just, sit in the sauna or do whatever he does. He's not really giving me that fighter aura anymore. Not that he ever really was for a while. He comes off to me as like a solid athlete, not necessarily a fighter. You know what I mean? So anyhow, let's move on to the next one, guys. Volkan Ozdemir versus Alonzo Menifield. This was one of my most confident picks. I picked Volkan Ozdemir because Alonzo Menifield does not have the fight IQ. Unfortunately, he makes terrible decisions. He gets caught, especially when he's facing technical dudes. Volkan Ozdemir, very technical. Better fight IQ overall. Like the argument for Alonzo maybe winning was, oh, Alonzo has heavy hands and he could catch you. Yeah, he could catch you if you're not locked in. He could catch you only if he's fighting a fighter that has either equal or lower fight IQ than him. So that wasn't the case here. Volkan Ozdemir just caught him basically right away. There wasn't even much answering back from Alonzo from what I remember. It was just straight output from Volkan Ozdemir the whole time up until it ended. And it was a standing KO too, I'm pretty sure. It was a standing KO where Alonzo just ate a bunch of shots up against the fence and then just crashed. Those standing KOs are always pretty fucking epic, I will say. Yeah. Solid performance from Volkan Ozdemir. He's always been a very reliable fighter, honestly. Volkan is always solid. Anyways, let's move on to the next one, guys. Bilal Muhammad versus Ian Machado Gary. I picked Ian Gary. This was my most confident pick on the card. I actually told you guys earlier in the day that Ian Gary is free money. Ian Gary is free money. There's no way Bilal's winning, especially after that weigh-in. I know the odds changed a lot since yesterday. I know he was like Ian Gary was like a minus 150, and then by the end of that night, he was like a minus 190, and then today he was a minus 300. So there was definitely something that others saw in those weigh-ins as well. But yeah, even from the walkout, guys, Bilal didn't look good. He had the most oralist walkout ever. It was all for show. You could tell it wasn't genuine. You could tell he was nervous and he was trying to hide it in a way. Like, he was nervous, but he was trying to seem like he was calm. It wasn't the case for Ian Gary. Ian Gary, if anything, had a little bit more of like a cockier walkout than necessary, though I understand. But actually, it makes so much sense for how the fight went, like the way they both presented themselves in the beginning. I think in the first round, Ian actually looked pretty solid. It took a moment for Bilal to warm up a little bit to what was happening. And you could tell that Bilal knew that he was going to be outclassed. Like, I feel like you just knew it from the first eye poke that happened. And he really took his time to recover. He just wasn't keeping up with Ian Gary on the feet. Like, he just was not. He tried taking Ian Gary down. It wasn't really working for him. Like, the most he could do was hold him in the clinch. Yeah, the second round I think was the best for Bilal. And I think it's literally just because Ian Gary wasn't as locked in, because he didn't think that Bilal was even going to be that much of a threat. I think in that second round, he realized like, oh, Bilal's actually tougher than I had predicted him to be. That's the only reason legitimately the only reason I feel like Bilal was even able to do as much as he did in that second round, because he was having good moments. He was landing some shots. I couldn't really tell who won that second round, but Bilal was definitely getting desperate at this point with some of his takedown attempts. You could tell he was trying to get it away from the feet, and yeah, then that third round came around, and I feel like that's when Ian Gary looked his best, because he totally fully locked in after that break, after the second round. You could tell that he was like, okay, fine, Bilal is tough. Let me fucking show him what a real fight looks like. He was looking so slick. He was dodging everything so well. Like, it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. Okay, listen, I give Ian Gary some shit, but like, that was a good performance. That was actually a fun performance. He just outclassed him. He was swerving him in such a skilled way. Like, Bilal didn't know what the fuck was happening. Like, he made Bilal look like levels below, you know what I mean? Yeah, that third round was so clear. Like, he was just totally styling on Bilal. And you could tell, because that's when Bilal's desperation takedown attempts grew. Like, that was his only option, was like to try and take Ian Gary down, and he wasn't succeeding. It was kind of sad. Like, I feel a little sad. I mean, I will say respect to Bilal for his grit, but he just doesn't have, he's not there, you know? He doesn't have the fight IQ. And again, as I said, when a fighter like Bilal with visibly less tactical ability fights a guy like Ian Gary, he will lose every time. Every time. He just won't have the answers. Ian Gary can adjust and find those answers. Bilal cannot. And that was so visibly clear, I think, you know, watching this, especially in that third round. It's funny too, because Ian Gary, after this card ended, had like a mini interview, and he was saying that he wants to fight Islam, and he was saying, oh, our countries have been in rivalry for a while, like with Khabib and McGregor, and he's saying he's like the best in the division right now, and like, he's so down to fight Islam right now. I actually don't think it would be a bad fight. He was basically saying that he doesn't think that Islam would succeed in taking him down, and that he thinks that he's better on the feet than Islam, which I can actually see, just judging by how that third round went. He is very slick on the feet. I think I never gave him enough credit for that. And he also has very solid fight IQ. So, I don't know. But yeah, he just called out Islam and wants to fight him. And he wants to do it on Islam's time. He was like, listen, dude, you tell me when. So, I don't know. Guy has a lot of ego, but I don't know, it's working out for him. So anyhow, let's move on to the next one, guys. Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker. Oof, this was a bit of a victim fight for Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker looked good about none of the time. I remember, I think it was the first round, Dan Hooker landed 2 jabs, and I was like, oh, those are some good jabs that he landed on Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan's head went flying back a little bit. And then Tsarukyan just answered back with his own 1-2s, and I was like, oh. Oh. It's gonna be a long night for Dan Hooker if it continues this way for 5 rounds. But the moment that Tsarukyan took him down, I realized that this was a victim situation for Dan Hooker, and that Dan Hooker had no answers. He was just looking frail. Like, that's the thing about guys that are built like Tsarukyan. I know he was also like clearly on some sort of juice, but grapplers like him and Islam who are built like this and look like this and have this sort of skill set, like especially being able to just hold someone down firmly without them being able to advance in any way, is a very dangerous thing. Like, there was nothing Dan Hooker could do, and Arman was able to pin him down in such an effective way that he could follow up with his ground and pound and basically do whatever he wanted to do. And I think after that first round ended, I just saw Dan Hooker in his corner looking like he was contemplating his entire life, like having a mini crisis on the stool, because he knew that, oh my God, I have nothing to offer. Like, there's no way for me to win this fight. I feel like it was so clear. It was like written all over his face, like, oh, Oh, fuck. But yeah, second round, Armin takes him down pretty early. I think he had like 3 minutes or something like that to work. And he ended up winning via arm triangle, making Dan Hooker's head look super pink. And I was like, oh, yep, it's almost over. He's gonna tap. Then he tapped, and it was over. I mean, I guess it's fine. He would have had to suffer a lot more. But in that second round, it definitely looked like Dan Hooker was just done. Like, there was so little defense. I could totally understand, though, dude. It felt like a rough spot to be. But yeah, a lot of people are saying, oh, Armin could totally win against Islam. Islam just laid on top of JDM and didn't do that damage that Armin did. And to that, I say, I don't think Dan Hooker is the same as JDM. I do think JDM was defending more effectively. Dan Hooker also kind of looks frail to me, not gonna lie. JDM didn't have that frail build. You know what I mean? Like, I think that genuinely makes a difference. I think Islam could finish Dan Hooker, dude. Like, I don't think that would be a question. But anyhow, that was that. A pretty good fight night, honestly. There were only 2 fights that sucked. Were the Nicolas Dalby fight and the first fight. The first heavyweight sparring fight. That was it. The rest of them were really good. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being here. We don't have UFC next week, so there won't be any predictions. I'll have time to do other things. And I'm thinking maybe doing a tier list or like an analysis on a fighter. I feel like that would be fun. Like, I could do an analysis on Merab. I think that would be an interesting thing. And then that way, I feel like I could do an analysis on Merab and Pyotr Yan because they both come from regions that I understand. I mean, Pyotr Yan is from Russia, so I understand this Soviet mindset. And Merab also grew up with the Soviet mindset. I know Georgia is a little bit different culturally, but... I mean, also, they're both very different people, I think, and I could break down their personalities if you guys are interested in that. Or I could just stick with the tier lists. If you have any tier list ideas, drop them in the comments below. I look forward to seeing what you guys thought, and yeah, let me know how you experienced this card, what you thought. What's next for Ian Gary? What's next for Aleksandre Topuria? What's next for Bilal? Anyways, guys, thank you again. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Goodbye.